I have been playing a lot of Xbox exclusive races over the last few months, making up for lost time after spending most of my gaming years on the PlayStation 2, and launch title Project Gotham Racing really took me by surprise. I love the kudos system, how real life street layouts were used for circuits, and the best part, the driving mechanics, whilst providing a serious challenge further down the line. Even though the second one, which I'm going to talk about in this video, is more superior, I still encourage you to check out the first one, and with around 2.5 million copies sold back then, a sequel was a no-brainer. So, where do you start on a sequel to a game like Project Gotham Racing? Bizarre Creations took in feedback from critics, fans, and Microsoft staff, including Bill Gates, and decided that the best idea was not to just add more cars and travel to different places, but to restructure how you earn kudos and enable it for Xbox Live, which only launched the year before, redefining online racing in the process. I won't talk much about that part because it doesn't work anymore, but this was a revolutionary move on their part. It came out before Halo 2 after all. Project Gotham Racing 2 was released for the Xbox on November 2003, and was seen as an all-round improvement over the predecessor, which is exactly what I was expecting when playing this game myself. The routine is similar. Earn medals and kudos points to unlock all content available by winning races and driving like a lunatic. Only, as intended by the developers, the way you do it is slightly different, and for the better. All the event types are the same with a couple of minor alterations. The Overtake challenge has better opponent assignments, and the cone challenges, while not as creative in the cone placement compared to the predecessor, they're placed in a way that you have a higher chance to maintain a continuous combo, which is how you earn the gold and platinum medals. And the cones themselves are bigger, so it's easier to know where they're placed. There are more ways to earn kudos points on top of gaining air, drifting, two wheels, etc., including maintaining a good line and having a clean race. And if you hit a barrier, you're not fully penalized for it. This clearly has a heavier emphasis on beating opponents and reaching a number of kudos at the end of a race. In the first PGR, the time-based events weren't just about reaching the target time, you had to do a bit of flashy driving to earn a medal. It was a neat idea to help stand out from other racing games on the market, but it was difficult to figure out what to set the target to in order to progress through the challenge series, because there were moments when I beat the target time, but the grand total of kudos gathered wasn't enough to earn a medal, and that was annoying. In Project Gotham Racing 2, only the cone challenges are about how much kudos you earn, and instead of numerous different ways to unlock vehicles like milestones, events completed, hours clocked, etc., kudos is only used as a ranking system to earn tokens, which means you have more control over which cars to unlock. My strategy was to hold on to the kudos tokens for the supercars because those are the more exciting ones, so forgive me if you're not seeing much car variety in the footage. And it's not like the predecessor where you can win every single event with one car. All the events are categorized by the car type, like supercars, hot hatches, muscle cars, and even SUVs, which I have no interest in. That's why I bought the Porsche Cayenne in this case and stuck with it, because it's the only one that's fast on a track. Cars can either be viewed in the menu, yeah, I'll get to that, or in the garage, which you can walk around, and even access an arcade game called Geometry Wars, which is so good it deserves its own mini review. In fact, it was popular enough for Bizarre to turn it into a franchise, although I didn't play it that much because I was more focused on the driving aspect of PGR 2. Anyway, I mostly bought Porsches and Ferraris this time around, because almost every single one is the fastest in their class, and it felt good to return to the wheels I used a lot of in the predecessor. It's like deja vu. Compared to the predecessor, I wasn't a fan of the mechanics initially because cars slide around more easily. There's a power slide category added to the car's stats, and I always pick the one that has the most grip. Sure, drifting gives you kudos points, but if you're not good at holding a slide in this game, the chances of hitting a barrier and missing out on those kudos combo points are higher. It's a matter of preference, really. I only drive flamboyantly when I have a giant lead in a race. Another way of saying I had the difficulty too low. That said, it still controls terrifically when you get the hang of it, because you will, particularly when you reach supercar territory. The general strategy is to pick cars that slide less in wet conditions, because weather and time is another obstacle in itself, along with small jumps and thin roads. While not as thin as the first PGR, sometimes the barriers are so short, it's hard to tell where and when to corner, especially when it's dark. Is it a memory reason? The developers clearly amped their travel budget, because the number of cities has nearly tripled from the predecessor, and none of them are London, New York, Tokyo, or San Francisco. All of them are different. The only downside is that these city spaces are smaller, like they're set in one region, unlike the first game which looked like the tracks were set all over the city if you go back to it. But that's the compromise needed to have more cities in one game, which I prefer anyway. As long as there are hundreds of circuits to drive on, it's perfectly fine. Though I think they could have selected less cities where it makes the tracks too square shaped. I'm not bashing the cities themselves, I just don't want to drive the same type of corner the whole race. But at least they kind of motivate me to visit these places, because remember, these street layouts are based in real life. This is also one of the first games to feature the full Nürburgring Nordschleife, before Gran Turismo and Forza Motorsport when you think about it, which makes sense because it's the only real life circuit big enough to create point-to-point events with it. I mean, the Le Mans circuit, for example, mostly consists of straights. But the city I'm really glad to see in a video game is Sydney. Okay, I'm not from New South Wales, but I've been to Sydney plenty of times, so I'm familiar with my surroundings. As an Aussie myself, if there's one thing I would love to do in life, it's drive as fast as possible in a Ferrari on the streets of Sydney with no traffic. I know I keep saying this about so many racing games, but I wish Aussie cars like Holden Commodores and Ford Falcons were here and categorized with the muscle cars. They put an Aussie city in the game and on the front cover, why not? Graphically, Project Gotham Racing 2 is one of the best looking games on the original Xbox. The presentation looks less bold, like the wording and numbers for example, cleaner. And because Bizarre Creations were more familiar with the Xbox hardware, they were clearly more focused on fully maximizing what the system can do. Look at the shadows and reflection effects which go through the interior, while the driver is still looking around and changing gear. So many details that I barely noticed in other races of that generation, or aren't as impressive. Whoops, I lost my number plates, which you can also do. Sure, damage is only cosmetic, but that's all you need in an arcade racer. And if you have the track to either yourself or one opponent, you'll drive past a few pieces of rubbish or leaves. What else does it look like? Thing is, where's it coming from? The cities are deserted. The frame rate is 30 per second instead of 60 like the predecessor, but it includes a native widescreen option which looks kind of pixelated at first, but you do get used to it after an hour of gameplay. Honestly, if there are serious criticisms to note, it's mostly thanks to the Xbox 360 backwards compatibility emulation. However, there are a lot of them which affect gameplay to the extent that you need to keep your eyes peeled. Firstly, in the menu, as you can see, the car list appears for a millisecond and the screen goes blank. If I want to have a good look at what I want to drive, I need to go to the garage. The first time I played this, I accidentally picked the manual transmission because I didn't see what I was doing. And speaking of the menu, look at the background. It freezes, then catches up to go to normal speed again. There's no rubber banding in game, so they had to put it somewhere, I guess. And each glitch seems to be unique for every city. The frame rate is pretty bad in Florence on occasion. In Sydney, the sun thinks I'm a mobile pole marquee without its cover, and in Moscow, probably the worst offender, the game simply crashes. It also happens regularly during replays or city introductions. I recommend skipping these parts ASAP to reduce the risk, which is hard for me to do if I'm constantly writing review notes down while it's loading. It's a force of habit, and I had to restart the console a few times after being too slow on the controller. This is easily one of the most unstable original Xbox games being played on the 360, but what's strange is that it's more bearable than the predecessor overall, simply because it doesn't have the slowdown. That's interesting. It's just that when things go wrong, it runs away from the fight. At least it doesn't affect the difficulty on the track. That's left for the opponents, who continue to show their ruthlessness. They recognize you, but only on straights. When it comes to corners, they just forget you exist. They can't even stand each other. I'm reviewing Forza Motorsport 3 next, and when I jump between playing these two games, it's easy to forget that the AI isn't as good in PGR 2. They'll test your patience, and I like to think I failed because there was one moment when I deliberately drove the wrong way just to get back in an opponent that kept pit maneuvering me on the first corner, but I ended up getting angrier because no matter how hard I tried, they always seemed to evade me. Oh, so now the AI recognizes me? So that's why I mostly encourage aggressive driving. I know you might fall in love with that Pagani Zonda, but it's the only real way to earn those medals. Besides, this game considers trading paint whilst overtaking sweet. Because the Kudos doesn't play as much of a major role in earning medals in events, PGR 2 is easier in general than the predecessor. In the first game, I was struggling halfway through just to get the bronze medals. Here, even in the ultimate class, I was still getting silvers with a few gold ones too, and you can get the latter by placing second. Okay, but you know what? I want to be a gold medalist for game reviewing. That's all that matters to me. It's also why I didn't experience the arcade racing or time attack modes as much as the predecessor. You get the full package just from playing the Kudos World Series. Point is that it's hard as you choose. You can either take it easy if you're trying to get the hang of the mechanics, or if you're motivated enough to get all the gold or platinum medals. It's a game suitable for all ages, except there are more events, cities, tracks, and cars than the predecessor, which control just as well, even though they slide around a little bit more, and the way you unlock everything is different enough to feel fresh. The only thing I hate is the stability thanks to the emulation of the 360, which is why I recommend using the original console to play it. And even that didn't stop me from enjoying this game to the end. And speaking of the Xbox 360, when it launched in 2005, so did another PGR follow-up, which goes to show you how much faith Microsoft had in these games at the time. I really like Project Gotham Racing 2. It might even be one of my top 10 favorites of the genre. It does everything a racing sequel should, and it's a must-have for your Xbox collection. No question about it.